In Hong Kong, Li Jianjun, who is a former journalist from China's northern coal mining province of Shanxi, has offered up what he says is evidence of alleged corruption at China Resources, a giant state-owned Chinese corporation. China Resources is listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Li travelled to the city to hand in documents he says will prove his accusations to the local anti-corruption watchdog, the Independent Commission Against Corruption. Since earlier this year, both Li and another reporter working for China's Xinhua news agency called Wang Wenzhe have separately been publishing allegations against China Resources on their personal microblogs. Prompted by Wang and Li's internet campaign, China's National Audit Office has started an investigation into China Resources. In Hong Kong, meanwhile, minority shareholders have filed a lawsuit claiming executives at a subsidiary of the company breached their duties by overpaying in a purchase of coal mines in Shanxi in 2010, causing serious loss and damage.
The documents I have show China Resources broke not only mainland Chinese law, but also Hong Kong law. I reported the case in China where it has been accepted. Now I'm reporting it in Hong Kong.
China Resources has said the allegations are libelous and ungrounded in facts. Wang and Li belong to a growing movement of Chinese citizen journalists, whistleblowers who use the internet to publish allegations of corruption against officials.
I'm a citizen journalist. I see it as my duty to expose the hidden dealings between government officials and commercial interests. Xi Jinping has said he welcomes criticism and supervision of the Communist Party by the people. I love my country, and I think what I'm doing is both lawful and reasonable.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has said he wants to stamp out corruption. With less than a year having passed since he took office, it remains to be seen how successful he will be.
The reclusive jaguar. Rare images captured on cameras set up in a protected forest in northeast Guatemala. And today, biologist Ronnie Garcia is out changing memory cards and taking a look at what kind of animals have passed by. A mother jaguar with her 2 cubs. It's more than the men could have hoped.
It's great news that we are able to see 5 different jaguars at this one spot alone. We have cameras at 50 spots in total, so to be able to see 5 in just one place shows that we are doing some good work.
The study is the largest of its kind in Central America, with 100 cameras set up across 520 square kilometers of land. And as researchers learn more about jaguars, they are better able to help guide conservation policy. Ironically, many of the same communities who once burned the forests and shot jaguars are now helping to save them. And this is where the images are really having an impact.
I feel very satisfied seeing the photographs, but more than that, I feel really happy to be so close to the jaguars. Being able to visualize them helps me put effort into protecting them.
Outside of the protected forests, cattle ranches dominate the countryside. It's here that most jaguars are killed, so it's where Ronnie and his team also focus their efforts. We're on our way now to visit a cattle farmer whose use of a very simple technology is helping to reduce the conflict between jaguars and humans. Just 2 weeks ago, a jaguar killed one of Marco Tulio's calves, costing him thousands of dollars in lost income. At one time, he might have hunted down the jaguar. Instead, the government and the Wildlife Conservation Society helped him build this jaguar-proof animal pen.
With this bigger space, the enclosure really works. If the jaguar attacks from one side, the calves can go to the other side. This is the only sure way we have to defend them.
Once nearly hunted to extinction, there are now an estimated 400 to 500 jaguars in Guatemala. And Ronnie Garcia is picturing the day when there are many more.
The Indian Army says it has killed over a dozen separatist fighters in the past several days along the line of control, which divides the disputed region of Kashmir. This followed a series of deadly border clashes between the Indian and Pakistani armies in the same area. The Indian army said it had launched the operation against the separatist fighters after it received information on the presence of a group of combatants in nearby villages who had crossed the line of control. A large cache of arms and ammunition were also seized.
I would say that I'm confident of the counter-infiltration grid that the LC formations have got with them. It is because they are alert. It is because they are dedicated. It is because they are exhibiting the best professionalism, determination and resolve that they've been able to do it.
The army claims that the slain fighters belong to Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed militant groups. Indian defense sources expect that the infiltration attempts from Pakistan-controlled Kashmir would increase in future. They claim to have intelligence showing that more than 200 militants are currently waiting to cross over to the Indian side of the line of control. The line is spread over 740 kilometers, but India has built fence along 550 kilometers. That consists of double row of fencing made of coils of concertina wire. The 8 to 12 feet high fencing took more than a decade to construct and was completed in late 2004. It is electrified and connected to a network of motion sensors, lighting system and alarms to prevent cross-border infiltration. There has been also a surge in attacks by separatist fighters against Indian forces in recent months. New Delhi accuses Pakistan of supporting separatist fighters in the restive Kashmir region by arming and training them.
The Rock of Gibraltar has been a British colony for the last 300 years, but Spain has never given up its own claim to sovereignty. And 10 days ago, when Gibraltar began installing an artificial concrete reef along its coast, those simmering tensions boiled over. Gibraltar says the reef supports underwater wildlife. Spain says it's a deliberate blockade on Spanish fishing boats. Spain's response was to impose tight new security checks on traffic entering and leaving the colony. On the first weekend, it caused delays of up to 6 hours for motorists. Even now, Spanish officials are unapologetic.
No doubt there'll be dialogue. The Spanish government speaks to everyone. But the first thing that they need to do is remove those concrete blocks, allow fishermen to fish.
But on Sunday just gone, in a serious escalation of the spat, the Spanish foreign minister was reportedly considering a €50, $66 toll charge to enter or leave Gibraltar by road. He was considering closing Spanish airspace to restrict some flights. The foreign minister was quoted as saying, "Playtime is over." But Gibraltar's chief minister says the Spanish reaction is nothing more than a tantrum.
If we were to react every time she got angry, then we wouldn't be where we are today, the thriving and prosperous community that we have become. There's a bigger chance that hell will freeze over than any one of those blocks will ever be moved by the government of Gibraltar at the request of Spain or her tantrum.
The British responded with their own statement. "We have many common interests with Spain and wish to continue to have a strong relationship at every level with the government of Spain. In the meantime, we'll be seeking an explanation from Spain following reports that the Spanish government might target Gibraltar with further measures." The cross-border relationship is complex. Thousands of Gibraltarians have opted to live on the Spanish side of the frontier, where the cost of living is lower. And around 7,000 Spanish citizens enter Gibraltar every day to work. This political row is severely inconveniencing people of both nationalities.
It was last month when the Syrian government released dozens of female prisoners as part of a deal with abductors of a group of Lebanese pilgrims. The kidnappers in return agreed to release the Lebanese hostages in 2 batches. Now they have a new demand. The abductors, calling themselves the Northern Storm Brigades, have issued a new statement saying they will release only 2 of the Lebanese pilgrims in exchange for all female prisoners held in Syrian jails. They also said they will hold talks about the hostages with an international mediation committee consisting of officials from Qatar and Turkey, which would supervise releasing the hostages. 11 Lebanese men were abducted in May of 2012, shortly after their arrival from Turkey, an Azaz district of the Syrian city of Aleppo, as they were returning home from visiting holy sites in Iran. Two of them were freed 3 months later after the Lebanese government helped release 2 Turkish nationals kidnapped in Lebanon. The Lebanese government has time and again said it wants the Turkish government to also help free the Lebanese abductees.
We ask the Turkish government to help us, just like how the Lebanese government helped free the 2 Turkish nationals who were kidnapped in Lebanon and handed them over to the Turkish government.
However, relatives of the hostages have expressed distrust in the Turks, accusing them of breaking many promises and deals with the Lebanese government.
Turkey is a playground of the kidnapping and it supports it. It helped free the 2 pilgrims Hussein Omar and Awad Ibrahim. The Turks went inside Syria and brought them. The whole Lebanese government was at the airport waiting for the pilgrims, as was promised by the Turkish government. But there was no trace of the pilgrims. We do not trust the Turkish government.
Analysts believe the new statement by the kidnappers is part of efforts by the Turks to manipulate politics in their favor, since neither the kidnappers nor the Turks have proved good intentions in resolving the issue so far.
The fate of the abductees is unknown because the kidnappers are not logical with their requests. Every now and then they disappear, and then they suddenly release a statement when there is a certain political crisis. Now there is progress for the Syrian army in Aleppo, so they released this statement. They don't want to resolve the hostages issue, otherwise they would clearly identify what they want.
The bedroom tax was supposed to be a jewel in the coalition's welfare reform crown, a vote-winning plan to stop small families and individuals living in social housing properties too large for their needs. But new figures released under a Labour Party Freedom of Information request has exposed the government's plans as ones that will disproportionately penalise the poor. Social housing tenants will see their benefits cut by 14% if they have 1 extra bedroom and 25% if they're underusing 2 or more rooms. 38 councils provided full data, with 99,079 families affected by the bedroom tax, but only 3,803 suitable properties available. 26 other councils provided partial data, with 45,669 families affected, but no firm figures available on the number of suitable properties available. Tens of thousands more are expected to be affected when data comes in from across the country. Adam Loughton has been fighting the welfare cuts and thinks the bedroom tax is particularly unfair on those who can least afford it.
This is not a democratic state that we live in. This is not the wonderful society, Great Britain that I grew up in over these past 50 years. This is nothing like that. This is a state more in line with Orwell's 1984. It's depressing. It's enough to make you want to kill yourself.
The chief architect of the welfare reforms, Ian Duncan Smith, has come under pressure for misleading the public on the full impact of the reforms. 1.8 million people currently sit on official waiting lists for social housing, a situation that will only get worse.
Why has this all come about? Because there has been no replacement of the social housing that was got rid of under the Thatcher years and under subsequent governments. People have had this right to buy their property, but then when the properties go, the local authorities haven't replaced them, and here we are.
Opposition politicians and union leaders are urging David Cameron to scrap the bedroom tax completely, calling it a cruel and callous attack on the vulnerable. Though the legal challenge to the bedroom tax was defeated in the British courts last week, those affected have said they will appeal.
Inmates in California's prison system are refusing to end their fight for basic rights and humanity. Hundreds of inmates have been on a hunger strike for nearly a month. The focus of the protest is to end indefinite, long-term solitary confinement.
This state and its governor is engaged in the business of torture, and there is no way around it. That's what this is.
Keith James is with the Stop Mass Incarceration Network. James says California has more than 10,000 inmates in solitary confinement. He says the state is attempting to justify the torture by attacking the inmates.
Prison authorities are blasting out in the media, this is the worst of the worst, these are murderers, these are criminals, these are gang members, etc. No, these are courageous human beings, and they're setting an example for people all around the country and around the world.
The strike started with inmates in the security housing units at Pelican Bay State Prison in Northern California. Jesse Duenas is a former Pelican Bay inmate. Duenas is now joining with people across the state to raise awareness about the torture of solitary confinement.
I'm somebody that's been there, and I'm giving you, a little bit of what it feels like. It feels horrible, and that's like, I'm glad that there's people protesting and doing stuff like this because my brother is still in there.
Advocates say the length of the protest and the death of inmate Billy Sell has made the strike a medical emergency. Prison officials have ruled Sell's death a suicide, but advocates are calling for an independent investigation. Inmate relatives say the state needs to take action now, before more lives are lost.
I'm getting to where I wake up at night and I'm thinking about it and I go, God, please let something happen today. Please let them give them their 5 demands, because they are going to go at it till the end. They are not going to eat until their demands are met.
Prison officials and strike mediators recently held a meeting, but no progress was made. Advocates plan to hold more protests until an agreement to end the strike is reached.
In the United States, more often than not, this is what sets the agenda. Only a few newspapers are considered the place for politicians to go and to fear. The Washington Post, one of the most powerful, is now being sold to the 19th richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. A man known for innovation and technology, buying a leader in a mostly low-tech industry. He's promising the editorial vision of the paper won't change. It has been in the hands of one family for 80 years, the Grahams, legendary and powerful in Washington. They stood by their reporters and against the government, helping to publish the Pentagon Papers, which changed public opinion of the Vietnam War.
The story of the 2 young reporters.
The newspaper was made famous in this movie, All the President's Men, dramatizing their Watergate investigation that brought down President Richard Nixon, and in recent years taking on the military for its treatment of veterans. But big scoops haven't translated into big profits. The company has been losing readers and revenue, down by 44%. So now comes Bezos with his deep pockets. He'll pay $250 million for the Post and other papers. That's less than 1% of his net worth. Newspapers are bargains these days. The Boston Globe was just sold for $70 million. The New York Times had bought it for more than $1 billion 20 years ago. Newspapers in the U.S. are struggling. Now the man who changed internet shopping for the world will see if he can revolutionize another industry that has proven critical to the American democracy.
At Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Hershey the cow donates life-saving fluids thanks to a porthole in her side. Veterinarian Rob Callan says that Hershey doesn't mind.
After it's in and it's healed, there's really no difference in their sensation than just normal skin.
Behind Hershey's porthole is warm, wet, stinky grass and microbes digesting the grass. For sick cattle, Rob Callan's team siphons out some of Hershey's healthy microbes into a bottle. They use a tube to transfuse this fluid into another cow. To help a horse, animal doctor Jennifer Gold uses a different source for the microbes.
If you have a horse that has very bad diarrhea, then you actually get a healthy horse's feces, you turn it into a mush, and basically so you can pump it through.
While common for livestock, fecal transplants for humans are rare. That may change as more people seek out a cure for recurrent C. diff colitis. The Centers for Disease Control reports that in the U.S., deaths from this intestinal infection tripled during this decade, with 14,000 this year. Almost 500,000 Americans are infected and 1 million worldwide. 2 years ago, Wyoming resident Charmaine Cecil was one of them.
I had C. diff colitis for 1.5 years.
Speaking via Skype, Cecil says that living with C. diff meant constant diarrhea. When antibiotics failed to cure her, her doctor suggested that a fecal transplant might. Cecil went to her region's largest research hospital, the University of Colorado Hospital. Gastroenterologist Steve Freeman says that at first, the idea made him cringe.
The yuck factor has always been a very big drawback to this therapy.
Research persuaded him that fecal transplants weren't that yucky. And to stop recurrent C. diff, they worked better than antibiotics. Freeman followed standard protocols to screen the donor.
They're screened with cultures of their stool to look for C. diff and other enteric pathogens and parasites.
His team infused donated stool into Cecil's gut by adding it to a common procedure called a colonoscopy.
Within a week, things were back to normal. And I've not had any problems since.
The Fecal Transplant Foundation estimates that 800 procedures have now been done worldwide. Successes like these prompted the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to lift severe restrictions on the therapy, though they urge more studies.
Under a sweltering sun in a Washington suburb, a group of area teenagers saw wood, drill holes, and put together the beginnings of a wheelchair ramp. The teens are volunteers in an annual summer program organized by a local nonprofit called Yachad. The group's main mission is to repair the homes of low-income Washington area residents. This is just one of its many community efforts. Kendra Rubenfeld is Yachad's program director.
We created a program called Ramp It Up, where it would allow all of these teenagers throughout the area to come together and build an accessibility ramp onto the home of a low-income family who is living with a person with a disability.
One washer, one nut, and one bolt.
Under the guidance of professional contractors, the young volunteers learn valuable hands-on skills, and as Rubenfeld points out, a whole lot more.
It goes beyond all of these sort of construction skills, and it really turns into more of an understanding of what it's like to be disabled, as much as somebody who's able-bodied can understand it.
About halfway through their one-week project, the teens receive a day of what they call empathy training. They use wheelchairs and crutches to get a sense of the limitations facing people with disabilities.
What it allows us to do is put more meaning behind what the kids are doing.
Dean Bregman has volunteered with Yachad for the past 3 years.
Right now, I'm pretty exhausted. It's a lot of hard work, but in the end, it's very rewarding when you see the smile on the kid's face when he comes down the ramp.
This year, that kid is 21-year-old Herson Portillo, who has had cerebral palsy since birth. That rewarding feeling is evident on all the volunteers' faces as Portillo is wheeled down his custom-built ramp for the very first time.
Thank you, everyone.
Juana Hernandez is her son's mother.
I feel so happy to see the ramp that was finished. I don't have a words to say everybody thank you, and I don't have words to say how much. I feel it.
Happy, very so happy, very so happy. Never see one thing like that for my boy. Just wonderful.
Miss Kendra.
Witnessing such joy in a family has kept volunteer Ari Rickman coming back each summer.
There's a lot of charities, there's a lot of problems in the world, but it's kind of rare to do something with your own two hands and then actually see the difference that it makes. I hope that when I grow up, I'll either do something like this on the side or I'll have something as my career where I help people.
It all comes down to safety. While embassies in Kabul and Baghdad were reopened, 19 diplomatic missions will remain shut through Saturday because of security concerns. The State Department says the decision was made after a post-by-post analysis.
We continue to refine our assessment of the threat. We continue, as you can imagine, to get new information, and as we do so, we'll evaluate our security needs going forward.
Some missions, like the embassy in Cairo, usually serve a large number of American tourists. Those numbers have shrunk. But the State Department says Americans and foreigners who need to get in touch with U.S. missions while abroad this week can go online for contact information.
Our preference, I should say here, is for embassies and consulates to be open. Clearly, we operate around the world in places like this because we have a mission there.
U.S. officials have said attacks could emanate from the Arabian Peninsula, where the Yemen-based al-Qaeda affiliate seems determined to attack Western interest. The U.S. Embassy in Sana'a, Yemen's capital, remains closed. News reports say the embassy closures were prompted by intercepted communications between al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri in Pakistan and the head of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. The target of the attack was apparently not specified. Former U.S. Ambassador James Jeffrey is at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. He says intercepted communications are hard to analyze.
It's coded language, it's language that talks around the subject, it's increases in chatter, it's all kinds of other things that lead analysts who are very experienced to figure out they're going to hit something big that involves the United States.
In Sana'a, Britain, France, Germany, and Norway are also keeping their embassies closed until later in the week. The Middle East Institute's Graham Bannerman says embassy threats in a volatile region like the Middle East must be taken seriously.
You, as a diplomatic security person, wants to close the embassy down. I mean, period. I mean, that's what you have to do, just because you cannot take the chance that something awful could happen.